Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Jim Lee's WildCATs number 3, cover dated January 1993. Now this was supposed to have been the final part of a 3-part miniseries, but when we open this one up, we'll see an editorial note from Jim Lee himself explaining that this is not the final issue of the miniseries. This cover, pretty colourful, pretty cool, a melee between WildCATs and Youngblood. No space for any kind of caption, but we do have the very prominent Jim Lee, and inked by Liefeld on the cover here. So I was thinking about Liefeld's inking on Jim Lee, on the Jim Lee pencils here, and I like it. It looks kinetic, it looks like it's done fast, but it gives life to the pencils and to the characters on this cover. And so the only characters missing from the two teams who show up in the inside pages would be Void and Vogue, so they're not here. So let's open this one up and we'll see what Jim Lee has to say for himself over here. So he says, for those of you who skim comics or skip ahead to the end, you'll realize that this miniseries does not conclude with this issue. Initially intended to be a 3-issue miniseries, I made the decision 2 months ago to take it to a 4th and final issue, at least for the miniseries. Then he explains the plan was to have a double-sized jumbo issue come out as number 3, but with the book getting behind schedule, he figured maybe the best thing to do was just get an issue out there and then get the 4th issue out on time. He's also talking about how there was Topps promotional cards, WildCATs cards, and they weren't finished production, and they weren't finished production in time for a jumbo-sized issue number 3. So we're going to get that card in the next issue, and also he's trumpeting here that there'll be a sneak peek at X Factor artist Larry Stroman's latest creation, Tribe, in the next issue of the miniseries. So there you go. Creative team here: Brandon Choi, Jim Lee, co-creator story, Jim Lee pencils, Scott Williams inks, Joe Chiodo colors, and Mike Heisler letters. And so we do see down here Wildcat Covert Action Teams number 3 of 4, and also December 1992 first printing. So he just squeaked it out at the end of the year. And also one last thing to note here, because of who we see inside this issue, any similarities to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. Well, there's quite a similarity to Dan Quayle in this issue as there was in the previous issues, and I don't know how this fits with what we see in the issue. So here the story opens with some narrative captions. His name is Maul, born with the ability to increase his size and mass at will. He's the strong man for a band of covert operatives codenamed WildCATs. And then it just picks us up on what happened at the end of the previous issue, which was that the WildCATs, some of them anyway, infiltrating a NASA location, found themselves faced by Youngblood. Youngblood, a superhero team in service to the US government, and they were there to protect the Vice President, Dan Quayle. So the alarm is going off, and Maul basically says, damn, they found us, looks like it's time for. And just something to note here, I really like this splash of Maul turning 3/4 profile, the shape of his mouth here, the rendering of the shoulder muscle. I like this. I liked it at the time and I still like it now. Also, we'll see that Joe Chiodo's colors have improved in this issue over the last issue when they were a bit dark and murky on some pages. So obviously fine-tuning the digital colors and how they show up on the newsprint made a difference. And this is quite the double page spread here of the WildCATs facing off against Youngblood. So in the course of the dialogue of the characters, we learn the names of the Youngblood members, if we didn't know them, if we weren't picking up Rob Liefeld's comics, if we were only Jim Lee fans. So we've got Die Hard here, we've got Bedrock, later he would become known as Badrock. We've got Chapel, we've got Shaft, we've got Vogue, and we've got Combat facing off against the WildCATs. And Maul here has Dan Quayle in his grasp. And then we've got a Coda knocked out unconscious and Pike out unconscious. They work for Helspont, the Daemonite lord who's trying to bring Daemon soldiers and starships to Earth, trying to open a portal with an orb of power. That's what's going on. Now, something that I noticed here is, like, over here in the top left-hand corner, we've got Vogue saying, "Spartan, isn't that Youngblood?" Then we've got some dialogue here by Spartan, by Maul, by Dan Quayle. "Shut up, potato head," he tells him. Another reference to that infamous Dan Quayle moment where he corrected a school child's spelling of potatoes, and by correcting it showed that he didn't know how to spell potatoes. And then it's over here and all the way down here, after Shaft has talked, "You're all under arrest, release the vice president now," that Vogue says, "You win the fan club prize, honey." And what she's following up on is what Voodoo said all the way up here in the left-hand corner. So this is not well laid out dialogue by Brandon Choi. Like, the conversation should have moved on. Like, what's happened? Like, Vogue is waiting around for like half a minute before she says something back to Voodoo. It just doesn't work. It's not clever writing of dialogue by Brandon Choi. And I'm going to point out another few examples of poor dialogue and caption writing by Brandon Choi in this review. This is an excellent double page spread here. So Jim Lee, by his own admission, the previous issue, he was dealing with lack of sleep because of his firstborn child, and he knew that his art wasn't up to par. And also he was recycling some images from the first issue of WildCATs in issue number 2. So here it seems like he's going all out in order to win back the plaudits of readers. And something that I always expected from Jim Lee back in the day was, I had an expectation that with every new issue of whether it was X-Men or then WildCATs that he would draw, that I'd see something new, that I'd see him pushing and developing his work and his style, that I'd see new poses. And this issue, yes, I'm seeing them. The previous issue, no, not so much. So he's back on form here. He's obviously got some sleep in the tank, and he's doing great work in this issue. So we can see Chapel here blasting away at Spartan, Shaft here firing arrows towards Spartan as well. Nice action page. And then we have Die Hard and Bedrock double thumping Maul. And that's a great shot of Maul just flying through the air, and the rendition of the back muscles and the perspective and the foreshortening, really well done. And then we have Spartan grabbing the vice president, saying, "Stop, all of you, you don't understand, this isn't the vice president, he's an alien." And that is true. And then, wow, just look at this. So Chapel isn't listening, and he blasts Spartan with a chest full of 50mm explosive shells. And that is a violent looking image there of Spartan getting blasted to bits. Of course, Spartan is a synthetic, robotic being, and he has, as we learn in the narrative captions here, he has cyber organic systems, but for better or worse, his Seal and Heal program begins repairing and rerouting vital power and sensor systems. So he's repairing already, even as he's been massively injured by Chapel. Great tight close-up on Chapel there. He's a nasty piece of work, that character. And then we have Shaft using one of his trick arrows, rather like Green Lantern here, to sonically disrupt the WildCATs. And so the narrative caption says, "As the leader of Youngblood, Shaft has the unenviable task of melding some of the world's most powerful individuals into an effective fighting team. There are times when he can lead them with words, but at moments like this, he does it with action." Okay, fair enough. And here we have the Daemonite who's possessed Dan Quayle, saying, destroy them all. So Dakota is up, Pike's up, and Pike reckons they've got to go find Helspont. And he explains, "In case you didn't notice, Coda, those weren't the Grifter or Zealot back there. That little exercise must be a diversion, which means they must be somewhere else in the complex." And indeed they are. Great anchor image here of the rest of the WildCATs being led by Marlowe, who's got some kind of sensing device here, and they're en route to find the orb. And then in the control center, in the complex, we have Helspont here. And this is something I want to comment on in respect of the coloring in particular, is how Choi is picking out the double lighting in the inks on Jim Lee's characters. And we're getting this kind of backlighting and underlighting, sometimes this warm underlighting. And we see it a lot throughout this issue. I'll point out some other examples of it. There have been examples already. But it was something that I noticed back in the day when I was originally reading these issues, and it's effective. It helps give even more definition to the figure work on these characters. So this guy McCoy, he's been there since issue 1, and he's the guy who's organizing the use of the orb to open this portal to Daemon. And so these protective shields are opening to reveal immense magnetic amphiel coils specially designed to boost the orb's energy beam once its outer shell is breached. Okay, so that's all going on in the background, and that's what the WildCATs are trying to disrupt. So Pike arrives just in time to give a little bit of a warning about Grifter and Zealot just as they emerge from this ventilation duct. Helspont thinks it's of no consequence now. There's nothing they can do to stop us. Once the lasers are activated, it'll be all over. But here, they pop out of the ventilation duct. I like this anchor image. I just like this little detail of how Jim Lee is angling Zealot's forearm towards us, and we're kind of looking up underneath the barrel of this weapon as she's blasting away. She's got her sword in the other hand. And I like the way that he draws Grifter jumping and firing with both hands. Characteristically, it's characteristic of that character, and it looks nice. Also, something I've pointed out in previous videos on issues 1 and 2 is we didn't really learn very much about Warblade in those comics, but he gets a little bit of a spotlight here on this particular page, where McCoy gets frustrated about Helspont and his agents protecting him and their project tapping into the orb. So he transforms into his Daemonite self, and he moves to take on the WildCATs, but he is, look at this, slashed right through the guts by Warblade. And what an anchor image this is as well. And then we get that kind of underlighting that I was talking about earlier again by Choi. And Warblade says, Daemonite, the only thing you'll do is die the same way my family did when you butchers took them from me. Okay, so we've learned something about Warblade, and that's good to know. And, you know, we want to learn a little bit more about that too, but we're going to have to wait. So great action sequence here. This is what teenaged me enjoyed seeing Jim Lee draw. This is what I was paying my money for. And let's continue. And then we have a scene switch. So in the background, there's another player, this guy, the gnome. And he has these 3 agents called the Triad who are working for him. They're in the same complex. They're 3 floors above. And they're up to something themselves. He is basically, Attica here, this cyborg, is working to bypass the control center and shut off the main reactors. So they want to take the orb for themselves, for the gnome. And basically he says here, he's got a Coda bodyguard, he says, well done, my Triad, my ultimate moment of triumph approaches. Once I have the orb in my hands, all of you shall reap the rewards you so richly deserve. And then we're back with the action from earlier, WildCATs versus Youngblood, and Maul has grown to monstrous size. Now here's another one of these defects of Brandon Choi's writing style, where here we go again. His name is Maul. Although he possesses the power to exponentially increase his mass, each increase is accompanied by a proportional decrease in physical as well as mental restraint. Now that point has been made about Maul in the previous issues, but here we have this repetition of the phrase, his name is Maul, and a little bit about his ability. Not good. There would have been a better way of writing this and communicating this to the reader, I think. And then we have Voodoo, who is asked by Spartan to use her power to get sonic control of Maul. So Voodoo, basically, we learn here from the narrative captions, left with no other choice, Voodoo concentrates. She reaches out to Maul the same way she does to the men who watch her on stage. At first, she cannot make contact. Maul's chaotic mind rages like a hurricane, but suddenly Voodoo breaks through to the eye of the storm. Once inside, Voodoo simply switches the power off. Now, this is a little bit unbelievable. This stretches credulity. I mean, she's had no training. She's been with the WildCATs less than 24 hours, and suddenly she knows how to use this power on a raging, gigantic behemoth of the likes of Maul. Kind of incredible, and especially since it was sort of insinuated in the first issue that she didn't even know what she was doing in the strip club where she was performing as an exotic dancer. She didn't have control over the power, it was implied. And we're going to see another problem again with Voodoo coming up shortly. So Maul is down, he's back to normal size, and then we have the Daemonite possessed Dan Quayle, who uses the opportunity to put a gun to her head, and he's about to blast her away when Shaft intervenes and says, "Sir, I can't let you do that. They may be terrorists, but we have them in custody now. Let us handle it." So I like the spotting of blacks and the hatching and silhouetting here on Dan Quayle's face. This is nicely done. And then basically he blasts away at Shaft. That's a bad idea. That shocks the Youngblood team. And then Voodoo herself uses her power to sonically grab the Daemonite. And she says, "Just give us a chance and we'll prove that it's not the vice president," right? And so Shaft says, "Okay, I'm listening." And I really like this shot of him here where he was kind of, it looks like there was a glancing blow off his temple, so he's bleeding, he's injured. But he's got a cool head. I like the way that Shaft is characterized in this issue, to be honest with you. So he says, "You've got 5 seconds to show me you're not behind this." And indeed, show him she does. So she grabs the Daemonite possessed Dan Quayle here. And then in the narrative captions we learn, with the Daemonite rendered immobile by a mind lock, Voodoo begins the process of breaking through the psychic barriers weaved by the Daemonite to imprison the vice president. The difficult task is not without pain, as the parasitic Daemonite Belial is exorcised from its human host. So we see that rendered here by Jim Lee, the separation of the Daemonite from Dan Quayle, and we see the Daemonite falling to the ground here. And the narrative captions say, "The physical and psychic trauma of the exorcism proves to be too much for Belial. Without the energy provided by a host body, the Daemonite collapses onto the ground, unable to support its own weight." So there's a lot of kind of exposition, narrative exposition going on in these captions. And I wonder, is it all of it necessary? Or to what extent are we really seeing kind of overriding here, Brandon Choi overriding the story? So anyway, Dan Quayle is back to himself. He apologizes. He couldn't stop it. And Voodoo consoles him. "It's okay, sir. It wasn't your fault. Everything's going to be fine. Just rest. Have some potatoes." Yeah. And then over here, we are back with Helspont. And he's surprised to hear Jacob Marlowe. And he says here, "Marlowe, but I saw you die 30 years ago. No matter, I shall simply kill you again." Marlowe, who suffers from lost memory, amnesia, is surprised by Helspont. What's he babbling about? But then he sees the attack coming, orders Void to put the shields up. Too late, they're blasted. And this is a great anchor image here. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I always wanted to see Jim Lee do something different. And these poses here, especially this one of Zealot, like somersaulting over Grifter and over the blades of this Coda, that's a pretty cool pose. That's nicely done. And nonetheless, Grifter is distracted by her and he's caught here by these energy blades wielded by the Coda, the enemy Coda. And Pike here sneaks up on Warblade and basically bashes him from behind with his energy pike. Yes, that's his name, so it's a pike he fights with. And here we have, this is a nice shot as well, of Zealot landing and facing off against the Coda. And she's here basically saying that she's going to prioritize taking down the Coda first and then go after Pike. But too late, she is blindsided from behind by Helspont. And here we have more exposition in these narrative captions. Zealot never even sees the attack coming as Hellspont's sonic attack overloads her brain synapses and blots out consciousness and reality in the blink of an eye. Overwritten again. Never even sees the attack coming as Hellspont's sonic attack. So you need to break out the thesaurus there, Brandon Choi, I think, and give us a bit of variety with the vocabulary, yes? Too much repetition, and then leaving Helspont to relish his victory, which he does in a very Silver Age fashion. It is done, the last of them has fallen, even a Lord Cherubim. Now shall the Daemonites take this misbegotten planet from the accursed Cherubim and their half-breed spawn. Pity you could not savor the moment of victory, McCoy, but you died an honorable, though painful death. I alone have the honor of breaching the orb. So he hits the button, and it seems like the orb has been tapped for opening the portal. And this is a nice final page here. I like the fine detailing and hatching on this image of Helspont with the dimensional gateway opening. And we learn a flotilla of Daemonite starships vector in on the portal created by the orb. So the last words are spoken by Helspont. Yes, come my brothers, the time has come to take this world for the glory of Daemon. The time has come for reunification. So that's what he's been aiming towards since issue number 1. So it appears like it's about to happen. And it seems like the Wildcats have been defeated. So how are they going to get out of this one? Well, the final caption is that be here next month or so, and it was 2 months later, for the most incredible comeback of all time. Okay, and this is a nice image here, like with the line work in magenta. So a little kind of promo piece for issue number 4. The final 4 coming this January. It didn't come in January, it came a month afterwards. The cataclysmic conclusion to the WildCATs miniseries. The final issue will be polybagged with a special WildCATs Tops trading card, and will also include a sneak preview of the Larry Stroman image project Tribe. And this image here, Jim Lee, inked by Scott Williams, wasn't the cover for issue number 4. He went with a different cover, but it was used as the cover for the trade paperback collecting the first 4 issues. And there's a letters page here. I think it's the first letters page in the series. And there's a little note here. Congratulations goes out to James Locke of New York for suggesting the letter column's name. Call it the Wild. Pretty decent. He will receive an art portfolio set autographed by the whole WildCATs creative crew. Now that would have been cool. I would have liked that myself at the time. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on WildCATs number 3. It is not the final part of the mini-series, it's the penultimate chapter. If you enjoyed this video, please like it in YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.